Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Six Sided Podcast. I'm once again your host, the Taxman, and I just want to say thank you, everyone, for checking us out last week. That was one of our best reviewed and most positively looked at shows, so thank you very much again for my guest, Hollywood Southern Dandy, for joining me on that one. It was a lot of fun, and we were able to cover more topics than I would normally cover, naturally just covering Impact Wrestling, and naturally having a different point of view on certain subjects is always a good thing, and I really think it translated well throughout the episode last week. So once again, thank you everyone for the positive reviews, and once again, thanks Hollywood Southern Dandy for joining me last week. This week we're going to be looking at the go-home show for Redemption for Impact Wrestling, and I will be doing my forethought segment. This one I'm going to do my forethought segment after my show review, because it's going to be forethoughts related strictly to Impact Wrestling this time, but coming out of Redemption, and you'll see what I mean once I get there, essentially. So like I usually do, I'm going to give a quick nod to our social media outlets and where you can find us. You can find us on YouTube. We have the Six Sided Podcast page. Use the wonderful YouTube search bar, type in Six Sided Podcast. You'll see all of our videos come up. If you are new, I highly recommend that you check out, well, for sure last week's video, but go ahead and give everything else a listen. See where we started and where we are today. Also, you can find us on Twitter at 6_podcast. And also, when you check us out on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe to us. If you subscribe, we give you a shout out on the upcoming show. So this week I have to give a shout out to James Proco, who subscribed to us this past week. So like I said, you subscribe to us, we give you a shout out, and I very much appreciate it. I also just want to point out that we finally have been uploading our material to the WrestlingWithWrestling.com website. That is definitely your premier stop for all wrestling-related news, covering every promotion. When the motto is covering all four corners of the ring, they mean it. There is everything you could possibly want to know, read about, listen to, etc. about every major promotion. WWE, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, it's all there. There's a ton of good content, and I've seen the numbers on the site this past week, and it's been getting a ton of traffic. So definitely WrestlingWithWrestling.com. That is your one-stop shop for everything you need to be in the know about wrestling, either events, everything you need to know. Check it out, www.wrestlingwithwrestling.com. And again, we are finally uploading our stuff to that as well. And there's my cat. He's very excited that I've been uploading all of this stuff, as you guys should be as well. So with that being said, I think I've done all my opening show plugs anyways. So we will get right into the review for the go-home show before Redemption of Impact Wrestling. This week we got the show opening with just another recap of El Patron no-showing the Lucha Underground versus Impact Wrestling show in Nolans, if you will. And then we have the actual show tonight kicks off with a match, intergender match actually. We have Braxton Sutter and Su Yung versus Falaba and Kiera Hogan. And I thought this was a fun match actually. Got to showcase a little bit more of Kiera Hogan that I've seen. She only has had, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody will, I'm sure, 3 or maybe 4 matches in Impact so far, and 2 of which I believe were squashes essentially against Laurel Von Ness when she was still there. But anyways, it's a fun match to see. Su Yung is just like, the character is so different, and I'm going to be touching on this later on in my forethought segment as well, but just really well done bringing her in, and if they allow her to develop the character the way that she wants to, I think it's going to be one of the most compelling things that they have on the program. So, like I said, the match was pretty fun, but it was what it was as well. It is intergender wrestling, so you're not going to see a whole lot of either high spots or a bunch of hard-hitting action. Although I do like how, at least in Impact, I know it's frowned upon men and women violence, but it's wrestling. Come on, anything goes, right? So at least that there was some interaction or wrestling. Some of it wasn't wrestling, but interaction at least between Kiera Hogan and Braxton Sutter, and then Su Yung and Falaba. And actually, I like that suicide kind of cannonball dive off the apron that Su Yung pulled on Falaba. It was just showcasing that she is crazy, essentially. And once again, just what a tremendous character. So we end up having Su Yung pick up the win over, she pins Kiera Hogan after hitting the panic switch in the middle of the ring for the 1-2-3. And after the match, we had Ali run down the ramp and attack Su Yung from behind, obviously setting up their feud heading into Redemption. So looking forward to that match. That's going to be pretty good. It'll be interesting to see what Su Yung can pull out of Ali in terms of performance, because as I've said before, she's been a lot better lately. She almost needs somebody to give her a compelling match. I'm not really knocking her. I'm just saying I don't think that she, as a character, is compelling enough to carry a match. I think she needs somebody more compelling and has more of a different look and a different style to make the match more interesting and kind of bring her along. Once again, I'm not knocking her, just that's kind of what I see with her character, at least. But I think these two could have a really good match at Redemption, so definitely am looking forward to that one. So after, I'll be honest, a ton of fluff, I think I probably fast forwarded about 20 minutes or so, to be completely honest. We had KM come out to issue the KM Invitational, and I thought that this was a pretty good promo, actually. And he named some interesting invitees to accept his challenge, if you will. Which, like some of those, like Barry Windham and such, like got popped definitely. So it was pretty good. And who answers the challenge but Brian Cage? And KM clearly did not want any of that. He tried to make a discreet exit from the ring and was met with just punishing move after punishing move from Brian Cage, who ends up, after completely obliterating KM for about 3 minutes, wins the match with a yet unnamed move. So if anybody did catch that, I missed it. And I haven't seen it on Twitter or anything, so I don't know what it's called. But once again, he just obliterates KM and scores the pinfall on KM in the first ever KM Invitational. So just a fun little segment, but my goodness, there was a lot of fluff and nonsense to get through to just get to the next match on the card. And I understand that this is a go-home show and you're going to have a lot of recaps and stuff like that, but have recaps about the current product. Again, there's 2 segments that I skipped over in this whole, fast-forwarding bit I just did of GWN throwbacks. Why there's 2 of those on your go-home show for a pay-per-view that you're promoting this weekend just does not make any sense to me. I know I've said it multiple times about the GWN stuff, but especially on a go-home show, it especially doesn't make sense to me. You should be showcasing at least parts of feuds that are pertaining to the upcoming card, rather than what they've done here. But again, that's just my opinion. Maybe some of you liked it. Just for me personally, it doesn't work. Now, after getting a pretty good video package and vignettes from Jimmy Jacobs and Johnny Impact in regards to their upcoming match, we do have Kongo Kong versus Johnny Impact, and this match was a good one to showcase the character of Kongo Kong being a monster. I thought Johnny Impact did a hell of a job in the way that he sold for Kongo Kong in this match, in the way that he moved around the ring, you could tell that he didn't know how to engage him. He was weary about engaging him. When he finally did, how many of his shots were ineffective, how much of his offense didn't do anything. And they've done a masterful job, in my opinion, of really positioning Kongo Kong as a legitimate heavyweight threat that could essentially take anybody out in Impact Wrestling. And you have the mastermind, the puppeteer, if you will, Jimmy Jacobs behind the scene. It's just, these two have just formed such an incredible dynamic in Impact. It's been really, really well done, and really masterfully, it's just been masterfully done. There's nothing else to say about it. Essentially, this match was a 5-minute destruction. Well, actually, it was a bit longer than that. Destruction of Johnny Impact, who in his own right is one of the best talents on the roster, and he couldn't do anything against Kongo Kong. And we had the end of the match, Kongo Kong essentially lawn darting Johnny Impact into the steel steps that were set up on the ring apron by Kongo Kong and Jimmy Jacobs, and get to see some color on the face, more specifically the nose and mouth of Johnny Impact after the damage was done. But my only criticism of this, not really criticism, but one thing I'd tweak if I was one running the match, would be once Johnny Impact's busted open, why they wouldn't just continue to beat on him some more, and just like, he's in misery, just make it worse. It just creates that much stronger of a visual, and would therefore, in my opinion, make Kongo Kong look like even more of just an unhinged, for lack of a better term, monster. But I did like the nice touch of Jimmy Jacobs just twisting his face after. These two are perfect for each other, and this is something that I'm going to get to later on in the show as well. But just really well done, really thrilled and happy with the way that they are A, developing the Kongo Kong character, and B, obviously letting him and Jimmy Jacobs have a ton of influence on the direction that these two specifically are going in the company. Now, the last match that they show on tonight's episode is actually the match that was at New Orleans, the one that Patron no-showed, so we got to see the rehash of Phoenix versus Pentagon versus Austin Aries, the triple threat from the Lucha Underground versus Impact Wrestling co-promoted show. So I've seen this match before, but it was worth a watch again because it was so good. And Luchador is not really my preferred style of wrestling, but I can respect the agility, the athleticism, and the way that these guys put their essentially bodies on the line. And how incredible is Phoenix in this match? Like, all of the amount of concentration and agility and just honestly, like, insanity that must be part of it too, to do all the rope balancing and just everything he does. It's so crisp, it's so incredible. There's no way that I've never seen anybody go from the second to top to second ropes balancing like that before, until I saw this match the first time. Like I said, because Lucha is not really my preferred style of wrestling, but it just is incredible to watch. And Pentagon is he's a mountain of a man too, and the way that he can move, being a guy that size as well, is super impressive. These three are going to put on a performance at Redemption. Austin Aries is no slouch himself. It just, once again, him doing the whole belt collecting thing, so obviously he's going all over the world and he's wrestling different styles. And it's nice that you can see in a match like this that he can adapt to the luchador style, but also still adds in his own flair that hard hitting, a lot of the reversals, a lot of counter maneuvers. Just, this is a really, really a good match. If you haven't seen it, go out of your way to catch it, because it's worth. I think it's a 20. The whole total runtime of the match is like 20 minutes. It's worth every second to watch it. It's really something spectacular, and the finish is so hot. Austin Aries takes a double super kick, and he is out cold on the outside, so he doesn't get pinned, which is good. That's because he's the champ. You can't let that happen. And then it's down to the brothers, Pentagon and Phoenix, and just the finish that those two came up with was just incredible. Ended up Pentagon gets the win, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what these three do at Redemption. Like, this match upped the bar for me in terms of what you can have at a co-production show, and I think they're going to far and away exceed those expectations and that bar that they set at the Lucha Underground versus Impact show at Redemption. So very much looking forward to this. So being that this was kind of a recap show for the most part, it was a good show, but it did enough to further the storylines going into Redemption. However, I will say the biggest knock for me, once again, was the unnecessary GWN stuff, especially when you're trying to promote your current product going into quite arguably your biggest pay-per-view in years. I'm talking about biggest in terms of, I'll be honest, they almost need a really good showing coming out of this pay-per-view to see where they stand in the grand scheme of things with the fans nowadays, or right now I should say. And in terms of just reestablishing themselves as a main event player and a main event entity in specifically the North American wrestling scene. So very much looking forward to all the stops that they pull out at Redemption going forward. So I said at the start of the show that I'm going to talk about my 4 thoughts segment at the end of the show, and that's what I'm going to do now. So these are 4 thoughts that are in regards to Impact Wrestling, but specifically what I'd like to see coming out of Redemption moving forward with the company. So the first thing I would like to see is, and I know that they had mentioned it earlier, but I would really, really, really like to see them limit the amount of tapings they do in a single sitting. You could see by the end of this round of tapings that the crowd they're dead, because they've been there for hours and hours and hours and hours of video and matches. They just have no energy at the end of it all. I would almost like to see them, and I'm not sure if it's feasible or not, to maybe tape like 2 weeks at a time or 3 weeks at a time. I think that's much more manageable on the talent, and it's a lot less taxing on the fans, and you would therefore get a better reaction from the fans to the talent, and just everybody gets a better product at the end of it all. And even if you're not able to do that, if you have a dead crowd, I don't understand why they won't sweeten the crowd noise, if you will. I think that's something that would just help everything along. It sucks when you're at home and you're watching a match and you can't help but think, like, why is the crowd so dead? It takes away from it a little bit. So just something I would like to see them look into or work on moving forward. My next thought is that I would really, really like to see them, how should I phrase it? Highly develop or put a lot of resources into developing the Su Yung character, and as well as letting Rosemary continue her character, right? Getting Kiera Hogan in there and develop her character. So essentially what I'm getting at is letting the Knockouts really establish themselves as wrestlers and as characters and as main event talent, because I'll be honest, they did a good job in the past of doing it. They are in a unique position now to really build some stars moving forward. And like I said, now you have Sienna coming back as well, and you can work her into whatever angles you want. just they have a lot of talent there. They need to harness the talent that they have available and push them and allow themselves to be pushed, both creatively and their work rate and character-wise. Like I said, they're in a very unique position with the knockouts that they have right now to reestablish the heights that they had and possibly even surpass the heights that they had. And we all remember the awesome Gail Kim and Awesome Kong matches from back in the day in feuds. You can not recreate it, but you can have something like that, similar or better, if you allow these women to essentially do what they can do and grow to their full potential. The third thing I'd like to see moving forward is staggering of pay-per-view events. So I really think that probably 4 major pay-per-views a year is a good benchmark for them. That way you have 4 meaningful pay-per-views, first off, that people actually want to spend money on and buy. And then the second part of it is you're not having to essentially reinvent the wheel more than quarterly parts of the year. So you could have, like you have one right now, Redemption obviously is coming up. 3 months later, you have another one, right? And you do that just to build your brand and rebuild your identity, I should say. It's a lot easier to do that with less pay-per-views because you can build better storylines to a pay-per-view if you have 2 or 3 months to build towards it rather than, 3 weeks and here's some shitty pay-per-view that nobody's going to watch. And the fourth thing that I would like to see moving forward, and I only bring it up because they had an intergender match in this episode, is I think it would be absolutely killer to have an intergender match of Rosemary and Abyss, Demon Abyss, versus Congo Kong and Su Yung. I think that you could build, honestly, you could take 3 months or 4 months or whatever and build a program with those 4, and that would be a main event at a pay-per-view, a big pay-per-view in my opinion. And I had that thought during that intergender match, and I think that would be incredible. You have 4 characters, well 5 if you count Jimmy Jacobs, that are some of the most dynamic and some of the most interesting things in professional wrestling today. Would be absolute money in my opinion. So I would love if they go in that direction, and if they do, maybe they got it from me, so which would be tremendous in its own right. But yeah, those 4 would tear the house down. And especially, could you imagine the video packages alone that they could do with something like that, with those 4 to feud? Would be incredible, would be absolutely insane. You could actually even you could build it over 2 pay-per-views if you really wanted to, if you did it the right way. Yeah, that's... Honestly, I think that would be just an incredible way to go to really set yourself up to be a different wrestling company and really be something special. There would be almost no way you could do it better than that, in my opinion. Alright, just to put a bow on tonight's episode, it's a little bit shorter one, but that's part and parcel due to the essentially lack of material for the go home show, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So at least it's shaping up to a very good card for the Redemption pay-per-view. So before I get out of here, I just want to say you can find us on Twitter at 6_podcast. You can email us with your comments, questions, criticisms, hopefully constructive, or feedbacks. 6sidepod@gmail.com. As well, if you want to be a part of the show, if you want to review a segment of the show or do a forethought segment or whatever, like I said, hit me up on either of those avenues. Also, make sure that you like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Use the YouTube search bar, that wonderful piece of machinery, and type in 6-Sided Podcast and find us. And when you do that, we will give you a shout out at the start of the next show. So, looking forward to Redemption. Looking forward to seeing where they go from here with the company. And hopefully they get a ton of buys and just get a ton of buzz off this. Because honestly, the talents that they have there now deserve to be watched. And I hope they do a good buy rate anyways. So I'll be watching. I hope you will all as well. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone.